The highest performers out there, they aren't just using a bunch of random productivity hacks. They're architects. Seriously. They design an entire integrated system, what we're going to call a productivity stack, that actually grows with their career and their life. So, how do they build these productivity skyscrapers? Well, let's break down the blueprint.
So let me ask you this. Does your day ever feel like just a constant blur of notifications, back-to-back meetings, and a to-do list that just never, ever ends? And then you get to the end of the day and you're just like, what did I actually accomplish? If that sounds familiar, you are definitely not alone. You might be experiencing something called the productivity mirage.
And what is that? It's this illusion that being busy and downloading more tools means you're being effective. It's a really common trap where all that activity and all those apps don't lead to better results. In fact, most of the time, it just buries you deeper in busy work, pulling you further and further away from the stuff that truly matters.
Okay, so let's start by really diagnosing the problem here. We're going to dive into the common failure points of all those traditional productivity methods and figure out why they so often just collapse under the weight of modern work.
This brings us to a huge hidden cost in most productivity systems, the maintenance tax. Just think for a second about all the time you spend organizing your digital folders, or syncing your apps, or tweaking your settings. That's the tax. And get this, for a lot of people, a staggering 70% of their effort goes into just managing the system. That leaves only 30% for the actual work that moves the needle. It's wild.
So this table kind of breaks down the specific ways these systems fail. You've got tool sprawl, which is when your data is scattered across a dozen different apps, forcing you to constantly jump back and forth. Then there's the checkbox trap, which feels good, right? You get that little dopamine hit for doing easy tasks, but the big, strategic work just gets ignored. And rigid schedules? Come on, they shatter the moment one unexpected thing happens. These aren't personal failings, by the way. They're flaws in the system itself.
And here is a really critical failure point, the one-size-fits-all fallacy. So many systems, like the traditional getting things done method, just assume we're all these linear, predictable workers. But so many high performers have neurodivergent traits. Their attention and energy comes in pulses. When you try to force that style into a rigid system, you get what some people call the GTD spin cycle of death. It's this brutal cycle of failure, shame, and then just giving up on the system entirely.
Okay, so this brings us to a really fundamental shift in how we need to think about this. Instead of just being a task doer, someone who just checks off items on a list, we need to become systems architects. We have to design the entire machine from the ground up.
So what does that mean? It means applying the principles of systems thinking. We learn to see that today's solution, like, say, starting a new Slack channel, might actually cause tomorrow's problem of constant interruptions. We start to understand that just pushing for 80-hour weeks is a surefire way to hit burnout. The real goal is to find those small, high-leverage changes, the lead dominoes, that can create massive results down the line.
So if all the old systems are broken, what does a better one actually look like? Well, this is where we get to the blueprint for a truly resilient system. A modular 4-layer architecture, where each part can be tweaked and optimized on its own.
And here are those 4 layers. First up, you capture everything. And I don't just mean your to-do list. I mean every idea, every worry, every little commitment. Get it out of your head to free up that mental RAM. Second, you process. This is where you turn all that raw input into clear, actionable items. The key here is the 2-minute rule. If it takes less than 2 minutes, just do it, right then. Third, you execute. This is about creating those protected blocks of time for deep work, killing distractions, and making real progress. And finally, and this is the step most people skip, you review. Every single week. This is your chance to zoom out, check if you're aligned with your long-term goals, and adjust your course. It is absolutely non-negotiable.
Now, the beautiful thing about this architecture is you don't have to build it from scratch. Think of it like building a custom PC. You can plug in these best-in-class components, proven frameworks that are already out there to create a system that's perfectly tailored to you.
So for example, you might use the principles of GTD for your process layer to manage all those day-to-day tasks with total clarity. Then, for your capture and review layers, maybe you implement the pair method to build a second brain for organizing knowledge. And to really drive that execute layer with a sense of urgency, you could plug in the 12-week year framework. See, they're not competing systems, they're complementary components in a bigger, much more powerful stack. But here's the thing, as your career grows, your system has to evolve with you. The focus has to shift away from just personal output and execution towards something with way more leverage, judgment.
This timeline really shows the journey.
You start by just mastering yourself and your own reliability. Then you start leading others by delegating and coaching. As you start leading leaders, your job becomes more about diagnosing system-wide problems. And finally, at the enterprise level, your primary output isn't doing anymore, it's deciding.
And that shift in focus is so critical, because we live in what Naval Ravikant calls the age of infinite leverage. Technology can amplify the impact of a single decision 1,000,000 times over. In a world like that, the quality of your judgment becomes everything.
This leads us to a really surprising conclusion. Building a robust productivity system isn't just about getting more done. It's about creating the mental and emotional space you need to develop high-quality, clear-headed judgment. When your system is handling all the chaos, you're free to become the calmest, least emotional person in the room, and that's the person who can make the best decisions.
So I'll just leave you with this question. Take a hard look at how you manage your work, your goals, your whole life. Are you just building a slightly better to-do list? Or are you actually designing a true operating system, one that can scale with your highest ambitions?